Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for this Netwealth Practice Management webinar. Our series is designed to help wealth professionals discover new opportunities to enhance their business. My name is Liam and I'm part of the marketing team here at Netwealth, and today I am delighted to be joined by Andriessen, the Managing Director from Coredata. For the next hour, Jason will be sharing some of the trends happening in advice and what your business can do to take advantage of them. But before we get into the good stuff, I'll just run through some quick housekeeping items. There is one CPD point allocated for attending this webinar. To receive this CPD point, you will need to have watched at least 30 minutes of the session. The CPD details will then be emailed to you within the next week. Also included in this email will be a recording of this webinar, along with the slides that you will receive in the email. And if there's anything you would like to ask Jason today, you can do so via the question tab, which you'll find in your taskbar to the right of your screen. And we'll save some time at the end to go through any questions you may have. Before we jump in, a little bit about us. We're now in our 20th year, and we're an ASX listed company who provide an online platform to support financial advisors with a wide range of financial products and services to help manage their clients' investments and superannuation. So partner with us, an award-winning platform to start running your business the way you want to. Some of our key features include a market-leading advisor and client portal, a mobile app, and a wide range of investment options, suites of detailed reports, and access to unique insights designed to help you grow your business. Now on to our speaker. As mentioned, I have the pleasure of introducing Jason Andriessen, the Managing Director of Coredata. Coredata is a global research and data analytics firm specializing in financial services, and Jason has more than 25 years experience in financial services, and he is passionate about helping advisors serve their clients in new and better ways. And he's here to do that today. So Jason, without further ado, I will hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Liam, and thank you to Netwealth for inviting me. We have a lot to cover here today. We're talking about change. We're going to try to make sense of the macro. So we're going to start high level. What has really changed over the last couple of years, particularly in relation to community and regulation. We're going to see what we can learn from overseas, and particularly the UK experience. And then look at the reality of change and what we should be doing to make sense of the chaos. Just very quickly, how we do what we do. Coredata is based in Australia, but we do have offices in the UK and in the US. We learn a lot from those markets. We are particularly specialised in financial services. In fact, it's all that we do, and how consumers make decisions, how consumers want to be served and how they are actually served. So 5 topics that will all make sense by the end of all of this. So we're going to have a look at an industry in chaos. The financial planning profession is absolutely in chaos, and the winner will make sense of that chaos. There's enough information to make sense of what's happening. Going to take a look at the Siemens Act of 1915. Why? Because it's an example of an unintended consequence of overzealous and overexcited policymakers and regulators. So we'll see what we can learn from that. Cry freedom, that's a perspective of financial advisors, and we're absolutely seeing a shift that is accelerating from the institutions to independence. Take a look at the UK, and then the benefits of getting this right, and the huge opportunity, particularly in the high net wealth space. So 1, 2, 3, let's go. Just to start off, there's a false narrative, and with the retirement income review happening right now, just daily reading the financial press, the AFR, there's just so many positions that people have been saying to themselves for so long, so consistently, that they believe it to be true. And one of those is that consumers need to be protected from financial advisors, and in fact, there couldn't be anything further from the truth. So just to tell you what the evidence says, the evidence shows consistently, Coredata's done a lot of work in this space. we know that financial advice improves people's lives. We know that there are tangible, measurable financial benefits to helping people make better financial decisions today with long-term implications. Advised people are wealthier, they spend more, they can do more, and they have less risk along the way. They have more confidence. The well-being aspects of financial advice are understated, and they're not fluffy, they're absolutely real. And Coredata has very recently done some work with a fund manager, Fidelity International. I'll just quickly show you a few charts from this study. I can talk about this because Fidelity has made it public. So after this session, please go to Fidelity's website and Google the value of advice, and you'll see a great report there that's written for financial advisors. One of the key findings was that Australians do worry about money, and 85% of this sample, it's a huge sample, 2,228 everyday Australians, representative of the general population, 85% of people worry about money at least sometimes. And it's not a poor person issue. Even the wealthy worry about money. There's a cohort there with more than $1 million to invest, and 38% of them worry about money at least monthly. And the issue is that financial stress impacts people's overall well-being, certainly their mental health. So you can see here on the right of this chart that more than half the people are saying that financial issues have impacted on their mental health. Good proportion say it impacts on their family and friends and physical health. We know that people who are financially stressed drink more and sleep less, and are more likely to be involved in an abusive relationship. So financial stress is dark, and financial advice can help, which is what we're showing here. So 3/4 of people, this pie chart on the left, donut chart really, shows that 3/4 of people say that their financial well-being has absolutely changed since they've received financial advice. So it's not just about the maths, it's not just about the money, and if we're only talking about the money, we're missing the bigger game. On the right here, aside from your finances, which aspects of your life have benefited most from receiving financial advice? You can see that half of people have said mental health. In an era where there's a narrative, and there was a recommendation from the Royal Commission that financial advice not be collected from my super accounts, which is an extraordinary starting point, it's absolutely a myth. Financial advice has benefits, and if we're closing off people who don't have the money to pay for advice from the money they've got in their bank, then we're making a two-tiered system, and the people who need advice most will go without. This is interesting. What personal goals has receiving financial advice helped you achieve? If you talk to most financial advisors, they'd be really comfortable in this space of living my desired lifestyle, being able to go on holidays, travel more regularly, be involved in hobbies and pursuits. But actually, 40% of people, 42.7% of people have said that they one of the key benefits is not having to worry about money, and again, 2 in 5 say they're improved mental health. So the benefits of advice are real. It's really up to us to be able to articulate those benefits, and the reality is these findings are from people who do experience advice. There are lots of barriers to people accessing advice. We want to minimise those, and one way to do that is an important way, and probably the most important way, is to reduce the information asymmetry. In this post-trust environment, which I'll have a look at in a second, it's not good enough as it was several years ago to just have a trusted relationship and not really talk about the money. What we hear from consumers over and over again now, and it is new in the last couple of years, is they say, I'm not going to be totally reliant on an advisor ever again. It's much more about making your value transparent. and being clear on your value. So, having said that, financial advice and active relationship with the financial planner improves clients' lives. Let's have a look at what's happening at a macro level. That's Napoleon Bonaparte. He was talking about the battlefield. The key to controlling chaos is understanding chaos, and there's enough there for us to see what's going on. Trust in everything has fallen. There was a Q&A episode the last few weeks on the ABC where they were positioning this as a young person issue. Trust of young people has fallen. Trust in everything. It's not a young person issue. We're living in a post-trust environment. What we have here, these line charts show the trust over time since the start of the Royal Commission. So we've gone to everyday consumers, everyday members of the community from Coredata's panel of everyday consumers, and we've asked them how they trust, what level they trust sectors, professionals, brands. This question was a very simple question. It was as simple as asking them on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is a complete lack of trust to 10 being complete trust, how do you trust these sectors? And we can see there on the left, but before the Royal Commission, that dark blue line, trust in super was almost at 80%. 80% of people answered 6 to 10 in that scale. So it's mild trust, it's not even strong trust. And that has fallen, it fell during the Royal Commission and it's not recovered. You can see there that financial advice fell from 60% and has not recovered over time. The answer to the question of do you trust or would you recommend your existing financial planner does not reflect this. So trust in the system has fallen, but trust in financial individuals, the individual professionals, for people who are accessing our advice is still very high. Accountants are the most trusted professionals. So again, that same question, but now in relation to the actual professionals, the proportion that have mild trust or stronger, 90% of people trust paramedics. You can see there that financial planners are at 37.9% when it's framed like this, significantly lower than accountants. And we need to be real about that. In the absence of trust from a prospective client who doesn't know you, you need to be more transparent with the value that you provide and be crisper in relation to your value proposition, which we'll talk about shortly. Just give you a chance to digest that. I did a round table with super fund executives yesterday, and they were very depressed by being less trusted than property valuers. All right, let's keep moving. This is a question that we asked financial advisors. They're the professionals there, and is 400 there. That's the sample size, and consumers who knew and had read the Royal Commission report. So we asked this question in February 2019. So it is an old slide, but you should know that there's a disconnect between the community we serve and certainly how financial advisors thought back then. So ask the question, how do you view the Royal Commission report in terms of addressing the causes of misconduct in the financial services industry? 45% of advisors said it went too far, and 20% said it didn't go far enough. At this point in time, that was quite disconnected to what our clients or consumers, the community, thought, where twice as many thought it didn't go far enough as thought it went too far. So hopefully that has converged, and not hopefully, it should have converged over the last 12 months as professionals get their heads around all of this. We can't have a profession where those who serve are disconnected from the people they serve to that level. Here's another example of the disconnection. Should the government adopt the recommendations of the Royal Commission in irrespective of unintended consequences, language we're going to come up against in this presentation? Professional said no way, only 16% said yes, but 3/4 of the consumers said, yeah, I want to see change, irrespective of what it does to your business. Very, very clear outrage at that point in time. When do we want it? Now. So consumers are the rust-coloured, orange-coloured bar there. How soon do you think the government should implement the recommendations? And you can see there that 4 and 5 said immediately. That hasn't happened, of course, we know that. But financial advisors who are serving them, you can see that a good proportion of them wanted to kick the can down the road. Yeah. All right. The slide that ASIC and APRA don't want you to see. This is what the pressure is coming from. This is the voice that the politicians are hearing from their local members, local community that they serve. That the issues, the revelations of the Royal Commission feels like an age ago now, but they were the fault of the regulators. So as you can see here, 44% agreed that ASIC and APRA were to blame, and 23% strongly agreed. Hardly anyone disagreed with that. So that's why we're seeing so much energy from politicians. They're hearing the community. They can read a chart as well as financial planners can. So they're seeing these sorts of charts, and they know that something needs to change. And that's why we're seeing people like Dan Crennan coming out with this position of why not litigate. And this is a direct quote from the AFR. That's the position that they're coming from. They're perceiving not the value of advice. They're seeing a recent explosion of misconduct. This is an inflammatory conversation starter for you. So this position of why not litigate, and our treasurer there saying, in spite of what he said about mortgage broking, I'm not sure how that fits into all of this, but the government is committed to taking action on all 76 recommendations, and in some cases, in a number of key areas, going even further. What happens when legislators get overzealous and overexcited? They may not think everything through, and we have an example of that. So let's have a look at the Siemens Act of 1915. This is a real story from 105 years ago. So everyone knows the story. There was a film made out of it with Hollywood heartthrobs. The Titanic, on a clear April day in 1912, in a clear April evening, North Atlantic careered into the side of an iceberg and sank a few hours later, killing the rich and famous, frankly, of New York. And the community was absolutely outraged. So the Siemens Act sought to remedy this. And what we have here on the right here are these legislators looking very pleased with themselves. The Siemens Act did a lot of things. One of the things was directly in relation to the Titanic and the community outrage and the desire to look like you're doing something. The lifeboats were mandated for all existing passenger ships. The issue with the Titanic, there weren't enough lifeboats for everyone on board, so they were going to fix that. And what you see here is the SS Eastland, a ship built about 20 years earlier, sitting very high in the water with brand spanking new lifeboats sitting there on the at the top of that photo, as you can see, sitting very high in on the boats, and the SS Eastland actually had a history of listing of dangerously being in danger of overturning. So you know what's happening here, don't you? Before it took its first voyage with its all new lifeboats, it sank in 6 meters of Chicago River mud, really, at the port, killing 844 Czechoslovakians who were on a picnic day with their families for an electrical company. Not often talked about because these people are not rich and famous, but clear unintended consequence that I want to get you to start thinking about, because there are other unintended consequences that we can see of what's happening in financial services right now. What's happening with the laser beam on the major institutions? This research is about 8 months old now. We'll be in field again in April. But these were financial advisors, and these were financial advisors who said that they were looking to change from an institutional licensee. And you can see there their intention. A lot of them would have done this. They wanted to, that should be move to a non-aligned licensee, a mid-tier licensee. We've seen an explosion of them, more than half, and a third of advisors who were planning to leave their institution were going to seek their own AFSL. Only 10% wanted to go and work under a different brand in the same sort of environment. That sounds like a good thing, to be frank. Reducing the link between institutions and advisors has got to be a good thing from perspective of conflict management, separation of product and advice, but we need to go in with eyes wide open. This is the data shown in a different way. So we tracked it in 2014 and then stopped, and then we got interested in this again in 2018. So how we read this, it's a bit confusing. The number of licensees on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, a horizontal axis, the number of advisors per licensee. So what we can see there from 2014, which is the grey bar, 2018 and 2019, not much difference between those two with this chart. You can see there's been an explosion of single advisor licensees. They're the people self-licensing. The ones in 2018, it's dropped off the single because they've started to bring on more people. So there's an increase in 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, as we can see there. We're also seeing on the right side of the chart there the rise of the mid-tiers growing. So again, what we're seeing there, we're seeing the playing out of the intention to be self-licensed. Related, but a different idea. There's also been an explosion in people being self-employed just in the last couple of years. There's lots happening in this slide, and apologise for that, and we're not going to have time. We could spend an hour just on this slide. This is the value chain historically in financial advice and financial solutions, and the future state, where we are seeing more transparency and advisors paying the true cost of their support services, and clients with the banning of the grandfathered investment commissions paying directly for the advice they receive. The outcome of that is the licensee used to be the risk owner. With the movement to self-licensing and self-employment, the risk is shifting from the institutions to the advisor and ultimately to the client, and we should be aware of that. So one unintended consequence of what appears to be a great thing in terms of financial advisors taking control of their careers, the reality is that when things go wrong, it can be expensive, and financial planners don't have the deep pockets of the institutions. You can imagine what would have happened with this fee for no service if there weren't institutions involved repaying all that money over the last couple of years. Kenneth, everyone knows him. Love calling out hypocrisy. So Kenneth Hayne, a major theme of his report was actually we don't need new laws, we don't need new regulators, we just need more teeth and to be more serious about the regulations that we have now. So he said adding a new layer of regulation won't assist. It's already complex. It's already overly complex. Except for this one thing that I feel particularly passionate about, in which case I think there should be another regulatory body, another government body telling advisors what to do. The law should be amended to establish a new disciplinary system, and that's what we saw late last year. The professional bodies were going to enforce the FASEA ethical standards, and that was in direct conflict with this recommendation from Hayne. So what we have the prospect of in the next year or so is a new regulator, a new government body telling advisors what to do. So the first point is, I'm not sure the government is great at that, and this is Milton Friedman from the Chicago School of Economics. This is what he thinks of how government runs things. But I think a better point is David Maister here, the Harvard professor, and a guru on professions. And his very firm position, and I agree with him. One of the attributes of a profession is a group of peers, community, that take responsibility for behaviour and hold each other accountable. And if you've got a government body telling you what to do, you're not a profession, you're something else. And it changes the entire dynamic around professionalism. This is his point. I'll accept your influence and guidance only if I believe we share similar goals. The point there is professionals take control of their careers. Professionals hold other professionals accountable for standards. It shouldn't be a third party who doesn't know as much about it. Another macro change that we should be aware of, and then we'll turn our minds to the UK experience, see what happened with them a few years ago. This is the Financial Advice Register. This is ASIC's register. After a long time of stability, around 25,000 names. This includes timeshare people, just so you know. Not all these people are financial advisors. There was an upsurge in the number of financial advisors on the register. Everyone's been talking about the advice gap, and certainly Coredata has been talking about the advice gap. There's no evidence of this here. We've never had more advisors. The consumers should be in great shape. But actually that wasn't a real figure. What has happened here is the institutions, frankly, and we know who they are. I'm not going to say who they are, but you can easily find out by looking at the Financial Advice Register. The institutions, including the super funds, stacked the register with advisors who were not going to meet the new education standards. So this grandfathering issue around education standards, where people needed a degree from the start of January 2019, is why this was stacked. So what we have seen since then, this was to last week, we've seen an 18.3% drop from that figure. A good portion of those 5,000 would be those people who were not really financial advisors in the first place. To be frank with you, they were working in institutions and wanted to get on the register. But there are others who are leaving the industry, and with the new education standards, we expect to see more. I've got some figures in relation to that, but that creates a huge opportunity for those who are willing to stick at it and change and embrace the new environment, as we will learn here from the UK experience. So just very quickly, it went live in December 2012, about the same time we were doing the Future of Financial Advice reforms. So the UK Retail Distribution Review was a change to education standards and a change to how advisors were paid. So we saw a similar thing around banning of investment commissions, not risk commissions, investment commissions. So we've had several years now, just remembering that was the end of 2012, start of 2013. And Coredata has a major office in London, which is where these figures have come from. there's no doubt that those advisors that have remained in the industry are better educated. That's mostly because the people who were uneducated left, not so much that the others increased their education. According to the regulator, quality is up. How they're measuring that is by complaints. The unfortunate thing for clients, and this may be another unintended consequence, is that they do pay more for the advice they receive, and I think that will be an outcome, and we know that will be an outcome of the commissions ending, the investment commissions ending. Advisor numbers expected to recover by 2021. Actually, the latest data is that we're back there already, probably the end of 2019. So advisor numbers did fall, as we are seeing in Australia, but the numbers have recovered. This point here that despite the propaganda, despite the narratives, actually robo-advice, in the state of it being positioned as an alternative to financial advice hasn't resonated. May do so in the future, but there's no evidence that in the UK that it has resonated. There absolutely has been an upsurge in advice tech and better use of technology to supplement the provision of advice, but we haven't seen it resonate in any way around being a replacement for traditional advice. What we have here is a dynamic chart. Hopefully it's working for you, and you can see the changing proportion between investment commissions and fee for service. So abolished in 2012, it has taken the best part of a decade to play out, and for fee for service to replace proportionally the commissions. Just focus on the dark blue section of this bar chart, please. So what we're seeing here is revenue. This is the entire system of advice. So what we're seeing is revenue in the UK, 2009 to 2017, across all practices, across the entire industry, from investment, doesn't differentiate between fee for service and investment commissions. We're just looking at the quantum here, and ignore the insurance and mortgages. It's not the main message here. Main message here is this shift from commissions to fees took some time to take hold. 2011, 2012, 2013. You can see we in the UK, advisors treaded water in terms of the economics of their business, but since then they haven't looked back. And the number of advisors in 2017 drawing that $7 billion figure, twice as much as in 2009, the same number of advisors. Just want to make that clear. The sooner we get our heads around new ways of articulating our value proposition and charging, and a more transparent environment, the sooner we'll get on and be successful. The advisors are back in the UK. We can see here it did fall from 2009 to 2013 with those education standards, and to our knowledge, in 2019 there were more advisors than there were in 2009. Excuse me. Very quickly, the environment in the UK is different to Australia. The regulatory environment is different, and advisors can fall into one of the three categories. There's a high net worth advisor managing a small number of clients, high wealth, high touch, close private relationship, fee for service, and independent, and a requirement to broker the market in relation to product recommendations. These aligned advisors, restricted advisors, is a strange thing happening. It's quite different to Australia. There's this active vertical integration happening. These people are the Ford dealers selling Ford cars. So you're seeing financial funds management firms actively buying and vertically integrating financial planning practices. wearing a particular hat and just advising on those services. Very different to the best interest duty requirements in Australia, but I guess like what happens with the intra-fund space, to be frank, with the super fund representatives providing advice. And these single product advisors, we don't have that here in Australia. These are people who are expected or required to broker the market, but they only advise on a particular class of products, be that investment bonds or pensions. Moving forward, the opportunity is extraordinary. We've just seen that there are issues with the supply of financial advice. I'm not telling you anything, you're going through it and probably transitioning as we speak. There's a small number of advisors who are already there, have met the FSC education standards, have moved on from their grandfathered investment commissions, and they're ready to take on the world. Once they do, the demand for advice has never been higher. There's a lot happening here. I know that in the advertisement for this webinar, Netwealth sized it as the $3.5 trillion opportunity. We at Coredata size it as $3.9 trillion. So for the next 25 years, over the next generation, the opportunity with baby boomers retiring, the older baby boomers moving into aged care and dying and shifting assets to the next generation is approaching $4 trillion. And if we just focus on the top 2%, the wealthiest 2% of baby boomers, you can see there that there are 78,300 of them with an average investable assets of $2.6 million. Some of these people will be your clients. The opportunity is extraordinary. The opportunity and the conversations are different. So recently at our Boston office, and the whole narrative is about, it sounds very sexist, but that's how they talk, how to engage with the matriarch of a family as opposed to the patriarch, so the wife. Should the husband die, and then how do you engage the next generation? That's what we should be thinking about. If you ask these baby boomers what they worry about, and we have, these are the wealthy ones, they worry about the same thing packaged in 3 different ways. They worry about where their money is going to go. Will the money accidentally go to my son's ex-wife? Unintended distribution of wealth. They've gone without over their careers, they've built wealth, and they don't want it to land in the wrong hands, which is number 2 here as well, the tax implications. Will they accidentally give it to the government? What are the tax implications of their estate? What should they be doing now? And this third one, again, it's the same issue, just repackaged. I don't want my son to have a Ferrari in the driveway when I've gone without all of my life. It's a misuse of wealth. Clear indication of what they're concerned about, and the opportunity is to engage the spouse, engage the next generation in that conversation. Not everyone is going to make it. So Coredata, this is our future of financial advice research. We've done that, only got about 5 minutes to go. We've done this over the last 18 months, and this is not financial advisors actually, this is practices. We've segmented practices into 4 groups. We've mixed our metaphors. We've got animals on the top and holidays on the bottom. That's okay, it sends a message. So these foxes, practices of generally younger, age 35 principals, highly educated, high growth, small businesses. These guys are the future. They're the ones that are well positioned and probably have already passed the FSC requirements from an education perspective. These ones on the top right are oxen. There's about 40% of practices in this category. These are more mature foxes. They generally have several generations of principals and partners, and there's some tension between the young ones and the older ones. Those practices, those Oxen practices will absolutely thrive in the future, but not every advisor within those business will choose to stay on. And sooner we have those conversations, the better. The ones who are in trouble, and they make up about 40% of the market, or they did 18 months ago. So I think there's probably about 20% more of the market at play. The ones on the left, the slow-growing small ones, there's independent advisors, what we call islands there. They're about 7% of the market, and they have probably left already. Those are probably making up some of the 18.3% who have finished. The economics of their business are heavily reliant to the point of solvency on investment commissions that, as we know, have been abolished or will be. And on the right here, cruises. These are big practices, but really cruising on past activity. And these cruisers need to change their thinking. A lot of them already have, and make intentional inroads to become these Oxen, and to actively seek to re-engage their client relationships to make sure they're in better health when the economics change with the abolition of grandfathered investment commissions. Change is hard. This is Stephen Jay Gould. So he introduced in the 1970s, he's late, he's dead now, unfortunately. He was a prolific writer and making very complex things clear. He introduced punctuated equilibrium. He very controversial at the time. He said there's nothing about evolution that is evolutionary. In fact, there's no such thing as slow change. In the natural world, that's not what happens at all. There are periods of static, no change, and then real duress and real pressure and real stress, at which point in the natural order things do change. They create a new state, and then there's a period of being static as well. I think there is clearly an analogy here with financial advice, where there has been previously, I know that Netwealth does an advice tech report, so it's not everyone, but generally there hasn't been too much innovation in the financial advice space until recent years, where the duress and stress that we've just been speaking about has really taken hold. And there is going to be a period of change. So how do we make sense of that change? Is it about technology? This is Steve Jobs, we know. Is it about process? That's Ford. Henry Ford didn't actually invent anything, just want to point that out. He invented a new process, mass production. And Lou Gerstner here, who wrote that the book on teaching elephants to dance, or who says elephants can't dance, he turned IBM around with behavioural change. Question is, what's the most important? How do you address this? And the issue is, in terms of importance, they're all equally important. Process should be driven by client need. Technology should support the process, but the behaviour change is the most difficult, and really requires sustained effort, and is deeply challenging, and does require the grit that you know so much about. Here's a model for where we should be heading. All three of these business models in green could be highly successful. They're just very different business models, so it's about choosing your adventure. So what happened in the UK with these high net worth, it doesn't have to be high net worth, but certainly specialists who highly customized, highly visible, high client contact services, where there's not really a need for visible technology in the process, but certainly focus on the professional diagnosis. So there's specialists, and those specialists may focus on on the wealthy, or they may focus on a life stage, aged care, divorce, or in particular areas of advice. So the specialists will thrive, but they're not going to be generalists. Obviously, that model will shift to the corporatized firms. So these are the ones that maybe foxes and oxen, they're probably non-institutional, but they are corporatized and they think like corporates. They have good structures, high structures, good frameworks to work within, good articulated advice processes that allow their advisors to work for their clients within the structures, certainly not process-driven, but framework-driven with strong controls and strong technology enablement. I think it's what Netwealth would call tech stars. Is that the language? I think
tech stars,
that's
yeah.
Advice tech stars. These platform up businesses are interesting, and it'll be we'll see where this plays out. The obvious place for this to come from is the platform or super funds space, where these previously advised clients that have lost an active relationship with an advisor because the advisor has changed their business model or they've left the industry. I believe the super funds, the platforms, will solve for this with these platform up businesses, not competing with the corporatized specialist firms, not competing with the professionals, but solving for the advice gap in a different way. Okay, to conclude, and then we'll get to the questions. There's plenty of evidence on advisors alpha. Coredata actually sized the amount of advisors alpha, and that has featured in some of the submissions for the retirement income review. But the mathematical benefits of advice are real. They can be sized. Active managers have been experts in creating a narrative around this. Advisors need to be better at it. But the well-being aspects, the well-being benefits are real as well, and they're not fluffy, and we should be able to articulate that. There is chaos. We believe that another 20% of the market, financial advisor market, is in flux. They'll either leave or they'll transform. And we're hoping that they transform because demand is not going away. And the opportunity is extraordinary. In this post-trust environment, it's all about being able to articulate your value. And what you should do right now, there's no such thing as perfection. Every business has issues. Audit your business, get real about what the problems are, and take action. Be easy to choose. That's about being able to articulate your value and communicate your value. How you do that is you choose your adventure. You choose your clients. You segment your client base. You're not everything to everyone. Choose your market. Segment your market. Don't segment based on the fees that you charge. That's a reverse situation. Segment based on the client need, the behaviours of the client, how they anchor value, how they want to be served. We can help you do that. Once you've done that, you'll be able to design how you talk, how you position yourself, what you serve, and what you recommend. And now's the time to do it. Just very quickly, how we can help you. We can help you with practice benchmarking, understanding how you compare with the best of the best with our online practice management tools, and we can help you understand what your how you're going, how you compare with others in relation to serving your clients, client satisfaction, and create an evidence base around client understanding, which is so important in this new era of FASEA ethical standards. That's it, Liam.
Excellent, Jason. Thank you very much for that. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed that really good overview of the trends happening and the change happening in the industry and what you should be potentially considering to get a bigger slice of that prize. We'll move on to some questions. Just a reminder that you can ask your own if you have anything you want to ask Jason. On the taskbar to your right, there's a question panel. Just type it in there and we'll endeavour to get through as many as we can. We'll kick off with, if you're a business who has sort of identified that you want to change and you want to go down a specialist route, is there any sort of considerations that you suggest businesses should think about before they take the leap?
Yeah, so I think that is a really smart way to go. Is the first point. If you're a generalist at the moment, then a business model that will win for the future is the specialist advice. So the question is, be real to. You can only start from where you are and be real with what your capabilities are. So make sure that those capabilities are there, and then seek to understand what the opportunity is. I think it's always better and safer and more resilient in the long term if you are specialising on a client need rather than a specialist area of advice, because my heritage is as a financial advisor, and I worked within a practice where in 2006 we were specialists in what we call reasonable benefit limits and surcharge tax, and you know, with Simpler Super overnight, our value proposition needed to change. We were able to pivot, but it just created regulatory risk. So segment on the basis of client need rather than advice category.
Yeah. Good feedback there. And we've actually got a couple of questions on this topic, which is what is there more the industry or advisors could be doing to, obviously earlier in the piece you showed some evidence that financial advice is making a valuable difference. Is there any way you feel the industry or advisors or anyone in the industry could be doing more to push that evidence to politicians and get them to spread the good news about what we're doing? Yeah,
so I think we should be doing it from every front,
or
right?
Why aren't the politicians spreading this good news story more?
They don't know it is the issue. So there is this false narrative, and sure, I get that the Royal Commission was into misconduct, but and the headlines that it achieved cut through, but there's a really false narrative that consumers need to be protected from advisors, and that is absolutely not the case. So Coredata has been in this space for a long time. We've been doing work most recently with Fidelity. We're currently doing work, I can't talk about that, for an industry body that is seeking to support their members. What should we be doing? Let's get our heads around it. Let's actually articulate with evidence, an evidence-based conversation. And you know, the most recent one is that Fidelity paper. So serious, Google that, have a look at that. That shows not so much the mathematical benefits, but the mathematical benefits are real. It shows the well-being aspects, and that is really compelling. What is also there is a segmentation model based on how people anchor value. So it relates to what we were talking about with the last topic, because only about 10% of people are the handshake, I'll trust you, let's just have a cup of coffee. There used to be a higher proportion of generally older people like that, but that's not the case anymore with the post-trust environment.
Yeah. What's that Fidelity paper called for anyone interested?
Value. So if you Google Fidelity International Value of Advice, you'll go straight to it.
Excellent. Got a question here. Do you have an opinion on the future of limited AFS licenses?
So I have, it's a topic in itself, right? I'll bring a community perspective on it. The community expects, it's very, very clear, and super funds don't want to hear it, but the community wants their advisors to serve them and serve them alone, and they don't want their advisors to be limited with what they can consider or what they can advise on. That is crystal clear. Yeah. Awesome.
And final question here for boxes.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Yeah.
Your box. What are the biggest challenges you see for them?
Choosing whether you're going to be a corporatised firm or a specialist. So, speaking from experience here, Coredata is in exactly this spot, right? We're a very successful consultancy, data consultancy, but we want to be a very successful, large, global consultancy. So we are going through that pain of corporatizing and frameworks. The biggest challenge is how do you create frameworks without becoming bureaucratic? And I think the biggest sin that advisors make when they're corporatizing is that they create process for the weakest employees. And what happens then is your best advisors are using processes designed for weak employees, so everyone gets dumber. Yeah. And the issue is not to have processes written by someone in compliance who doesn't understand the clients. It's not about process, it's about frameworks. You need framework to be able to serve the client. The person who understands the client should be the one providing the solutions for the client, not some propeller head in head office.
Awesome. And to leave listeners, if they want to learn about Coredata and your services, anything today, what can they do?
Coredata.com.au. I just want to show you here, this is Carl Jung. So Carl Jung is a forefather of psychotherapy. He gave us words like personas. He was the one that said that people think differently, but actually people, regardless of where they are, have similar frameworks that they think within. Famous for sleeping with one of his clients, so teaching us something about professional boundaries. But this is what he said. He said, life is hard, toughen up, sort yourself out, make a plan, face the challenges, and start with small changes.
Awesome. Good last piece. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed that, listeners. I'll just leave you with some final housekeeping items. That is, if you missed the start, there is one CPD point allocated for attending this webinar. We will be sending that out in an email within the next week. Also in that email will be a recording of this presentation along with today's slides. You may also be interested in our 3 CPD Technical Super Roadshow, which kicked off this week. Keith Chu presented in Hobart yesterday, and he will be touring all major cities in Australia over the next couple of weeks. So there's still spots available for most. So yeah, check that out if you're interested in learning 4 invaluable super strategies you can use with your clients. In our portfolio construction webinar series, in a couple of weeks, we will be joined by Ausbill's head of ESG research to discuss current ESG themes, including regulatory changes and key environmental, social, and government forces that investors need to understand in 2020. So you may enjoy attending that one too. And with the school year kicked off again, now's the time you can get your teacher, a teacher you know, to get interested in transforming their classroom into a virtual classroom with Banker. We sponsor Banker. It's amazing what they do in primary schools and early years of high schools. It's a fantastic way to teach kids about financial literacy and to get them up to speed with important financial skills. They learn all about super, interest, rents, mortgage, unbelievable things I wish I had at school. And the best part is that we're sponsoring it. So if your teacher's interested, it's at no cost to them. It's all on us. So let us know if you would like your school to be involved in that. Thank you again. Thank you for joining us. We hope to see you next time at our Business IQ webinar series. Enjoy the rest of your day.